参った。泣けか。
ありえねえ、食事と会話の真っ最中に。しかも続きを噛み始めたぞ。
Hello everyone, and welcome to the first video in a short little series I want to do. I'm not sure what I'll call it yet. You guys, I'm sure the title of the video you guys clicked on will indicate what I ended up going with. But I wanted to kind of document my my prep for the regional coming up in March. I put it up for a poll of what deck you guys wanted to see me play in the regional, and subsequently make a video series for. And Croc was the winner. So in March, I am going to be playing a Croc deck. And I was just going to document kind of my process as I'm going through this, as I'm learning new matchups, and kind of giving you guys information on what I'm finding out about the deck, different matchups and everything like that, and different tips and tricks or whatever that you guys might be able to use if you really enjoy playing Croc. So that's what this series will be. And I guess just to start off, this is the list that I'm starting from. This is the one I've been playing in paper recently. Some of these choices were made just because of the convenience of what I had in front of me at the moment. And then other cards are kind of at the ratios I want them. But that'll be part of talking out through this series is fine-tuning. But I guess just to go through the list as it is right now, kind of explain the different things with the deck briefly, and then I'll go over the kinds of things that I still need to learn and figure out with the deck so that I can be ready for regionals. But just starting off with the deck tech, we have our 2K suite, which is going to be Mrs. Wednesday, Miss Golden Week, and Miss Merry Christmas. I ended up switching away from the Shirahoshi, the one that makes your opponent trash a card, because I found that a lot of times it was trading a 2K for, and it would be a block for sure, but I felt like that 2K in hand would have just been better for me, outside of maybe matchups like pudding matchups, because they can sometimes punish you just holding on to all of your 2Ks in hand for the late game. And so I wanted to make as my 2Ks be as searchable as possible, because oftentimes when you are searching with either Miss Valentine or with Disappointed, you really have exactly one card in mind that you want to pick up. And if you don't find it, you really want to find a 2K or a ground death. So in those situations, if you're not going to find the card that you really want, it's usually none of the other cards are quite as good of a backup plan. Like frequently you'll be looking for Bon Clay, and if you don't find Bon Clay, none of the other cards are quite going to fit that slot. So you just want to take as much counter as you can. So that's just one of the things that I found. One thing that I am unsure on, that it would be early in my testing for messing around with these ratios, is maybe cutting some number of Miss Merry Christmas and adding some Mr. 9. Let me pull him up. Mr. 9 here, just as a vanilla, that is a 5K or a 5 cost 6K body. That is something you can get off of Mr. 2 in a pinch. I did find that there were some times where I would find my Mr. 2s, but I would find none of my 5 cost characters, and that was sometimes pretty awkward. And the on KO on Miss Merry Christmas has never been the strongest of them. So having something that I can summon for this small edge case without losing too much. There are a couple matchups where this ability can be useful. I don't think it's usually ever going to be your ideal plan to play out this 2K to use the on KO, but there will definitely be times where you have to play it out, and just incidentally getting access to that KO one cost stage is pretty helpful. Especially with an OP15 where we see another stage coming in at 1. I do think that there's definitely something to be said about having access to this KO, even if it's and not something you go for all the time. So those are my 2Ks. All of them are really good. Miss Wednesday being particularly good if you can summon it off of Miss All Sunday. If you do Miss All Sunday, summoning Bon Clay and Miss Wednesday, and then you Bon Clay into Dazbones to rest something, then this Miss Wednesday lets you swing really easily with either your leader or anything else that you have on the board at that moment into theirs, and you can almost guaranteed get something off the board that way. Just a very strong card. The toughest thing is actually finding an opportunity to get them in the trash, because a lot of times you don't want to over counter, and if your opponents aren't, they'll either be swinging 5s or 7s, and so sometimes it can be a little awkward to get this one in the trash at just the right time. But when you do manage to get it in the trash, either through one of your searchers or you get a good counter, it's really great to be able to summon off of All Sunday into that Dazbone line. Miss Golden Week I find as one of my fallbacks here. The best card you can see on the first turn is a Miss Valentine or multiples. Sometimes, though, you won't find your Miss Valentines, and you want to be able to get some of your 5-drops out of your hand and into the bin, and Miss Golden Week is really good at doing that, kind of getting stuff out of your hand without you having to make some awkward counter plays. But we'll push into that more. And then Miss Merry Christmas is almost exclusively a 2K. Every once in a while you will have it out, and it can be something that is useful because it replaces itself. Miss Golden Week is a -1 in hand. Golden Week is a 0 in hand. So sometimes if you don't need to sculpt your hand at all, this can be good at using to give something minus to play out like a on curve Dazbones or something like that. So there are a couple situations where you would play it out, but in those situations it's almost always going to be just about the same to play out any of the other ones. So probably the weakest of the 2Ks, but definitely still relevant at times. Next category to go over is the searchers. We have Miss Valentine and Disappointed. Both are really good in the deck. You definitely want 4 of each. Being able to fill your trash really rapidly with these ones is really important for the deck, so that you can find all of the cards you need, and then you go into the end game where you get to play out your Miss All Sundays and pull a bunch of stuff back with Bon Clay. So very important card for the deck. I'm really happy that this one is getting both. It has the box topper, and I saw in Japan they're also getting their participation prizing. Over there is going to have a different alt art for Miss Valentine, which will be great, and maybe I'll be able to pick up some winners when they come to English meta. After that, we can go into the probably one of the most important cards in the deck. Realistically, if you look at the deck and just look at rarity alone, you'll know which cards are the most important in the deck. The SRs and the Secret are far and away more important than the rest of the cards in the deck. With the possible exception being Miss Valentine, because it allows you to have the consistency to pull the ones you need from the other 3. But if you could always have one Mr. 2, one Miss All Sunday, one Crocodile in your hand every single game, your win rate would go through the roof. The deck does feel quite consistent, but a lot of times you will find these cards maybe a turn late from when you want them, or you will find 2 Crocs and no Miss All Sundays. So being able to search up any of these 3 cards in just the right ratios is the key to kind of making this deck hum. But going over the first of them, we have Mr. Monclay here. He's a 4-cost, 5,000 power, 1K counter with on KO play up to one character card with a type including Brokeworks and a cost of 5 or less other than Mr. 2 Monclay from your hand or from the trash. From the trash is really important there, and that's why this deck gets to be so performant, is that he is effectively drawing you a card in a lot of cases, and the times when you do have to play something out of your hand, you're almost certainly getting something strong out of your hand, and that's just really important for the deck. The fact that it can be revived off of Miss All Sunday is also really important for the deck. Your 5-drops cannot be, so this Bon Clay is an important piece that allows you to summon 5-drops off of Miss All Sunday. This is really one of the early linchpins of the deck. If you can find these when you need them and be able to pull out something relevant from the yard, you're already in a pretty good spot, especially because right after your Bonclays, Miss All Sunday is going to be right behind it on the curve, allowing you to get double use out of him, which is quite a strong thing. Moving into the cards that you target with Bonclay, we have Mr. 4. I think I want to go up some number of copies of this one. This one feels like it's more important than the list I started with. Acknowledged. I feel like a lot of times just playing out a Mr. 4 to pick up a Miss All Sunday or a Crocodile that you need for later in the game can be really important, especially because oftentimes you can't afford to take, the Miss All Sunday and Crocodile off of the Miss Valentine because you will be passing up on early game plays. A lot of times you'll get into a situation where you have to pick between Bonclay and one of your other two top ends, and doesn't feel great. But it's significantly mitigated if you can find Mr. 4s later in the game to get you value and effectively draw you one of these cards back, which is a great place to be. So I think I want to go up some number of these, probably not all the way to 4, but probably 2 to 3 here I think will be a stable number for me to get to. After that, we have this Miss Doublefinger, who's actually really, really important in a lot of different matchups, just because being able to protect your characters through cost increasing them is really important for kind of interrupting the game plan of a lot of decks. Mihawk in particular has difficulty dealing with the Zala because she'll be a 7k most of the time, meaning that she's not just free to swing into, and she's good to swing back into Mihawk's characters. But on top of that, it makes your Crocodiles and with a couple of them, your Miss All Sundays, immune to the Mihawk character, which is really important because that's one of the ways you break that kind of stalemate where you guys just go back and forth freezing each other's characters, is through having a Zala on the board. Definitely one that you need at least 3 copies of, I think. 4 is one that I'm going to adjust. This is the 4th copy, I think, is going to be part of my ratio adjustments. Whether or not I need all 4 of them, I have yet to fully identify. It is very strong, and having 4 copies does benefit you, but I just don't know if all 4 copies is the correct versus maybe adjusting some of the other ratios. After that, we have Mr. 1 Dazbones. This is your way you beat low to the ground decks. Any deck that's trying to go fast, this is exactly the kind of card that will help you break the early game. And it also works really well against decks that rely on their characters not being able to be removed, because almost always cards that can't be removed can be KO'd in combat. A notable one that you can think of is the Sanji deck. Oftentimes, the blue-purple Sanji deck will play down their Sanjis early, just expecting them to survive, because if they don't attack with it, then there's no way that they can lose their 5k body. But throw a Dazbones at it, and you can really out their win con from the very beginning of the game, putting them on the back foot immediately. So Dazbones, very strong character, also really strong with the Miss All Sunday play that I mentioned, where you play out Miss All Sunday, Mr. 2, and Wednesday, and then sack Mr. 2 to get Dazbones. This will let you clear a lot of things off of your opponent's board at relatively cheap cost for what it is, allowing you to be the one moving into the end game with more bodies. So really important that you have enough Dazbones to be able to regularly find him. Like with Zala, I think that the correct number is at least 3. The 4th one being part of my ratio adjustments that I will have to be going into and doing testing. Final 5-drop here is Mr. 5, Jim. He's another blocker, which can be really important. I think that it's important to maintain a certain number of blockers that you can play off of Mrs. All Sunday. because there will be plenty of times in the end game where you would like to have a Croc, but you don't have a Croc to do the freeze, and so you'll have to use your existing Crocs on board to do a freeze, and then play Miss All Sunday to get out a blocker to kind of, while not as strong as the freeze, it is quite effective sometimes to weave in that blocker. Another thing that helps with the blocker sometimes is if you are double freezing with Croc constantly, then you are unable to use Patchwork very often, because their characters that you're freezing will never be rested past that point, and Patchwork loses a lot of value at that point. If you can play out a blocker and let them swing into it, even if they can't make anything profitable out of it because you just get to block it, you then get to Patchwork their character, which can be really important. That is definitely a gameplay level up that I'm working on, finding the right times to play Crocodile versus Miss All Sunday, to play out a blocker, and it's an ongoing process to learn how to do that. Then getting into our top end cards, we have Miss All Sunday, who's super, super important. When you go into the end game with your crocodiles, a lot of times you are not able to develop much more in the way of bodies. So if you can find the time to play a Miss All Sunday before you start playing your crocs, this is the card that allows you to move into the end game with characters, which is really important for the deck. All right, and what else to say about Miss All Sunday? I think to drive the point home, I think that it is more important that you find at least one Miss All Sunday in a lot of games than it is that you find 3 crocodiles. I know that sometimes 3 crocodiles can just end a game just through their sheer power level, but I think that a lot of times you will get into a pattern where your opponent continues to develop board and you are stuck just playing your crocodiles every turn and swinging with your lead, and you are not able to finish out the game in time. That is 100% mitigated if you can stick a Miss All Sunday who can revive either a Daz Bones or a Zala in that like right on the 7 or 8 dawn turn, and then move into the crocodile area with just those extra attacks every turn. It's a really big improvement in the deck, allowing you to really push for game a lot more efficiently. Even if the power level isn't quite as high as Crocodile, whereas Crocodile can kind of lock up games on his own, Miss All Sunday does need a little bit of juice to push over the finish line. But I think that the combination of the two is the ideal situation. You want one Sunday really early on, and then as many crocodiles in a row as you can. Or sometimes there's some matchups where even Miss All Sunday is the better of the two. I need to help write down and quantify those matchups where she is the better play, because I'm having a difficulty like really expressing what it is about a deck that makes the Miss All Sunday plan the stronger one. But I've definitely felt it where there have been times where the crocodiles, I'm like, no, I don't really want a crocodile. I just want another Miss All Sunday, and keep getting a wide board of all 6 and 7K attacks plus your All Sundays. But yeah, suffice to say, definitely a must have 4 of in the deck. I don't think there's any negotiating that. Finally, for our characters, we have the crocodile. I think that this one kind of speaks for itself. Even other decks that aren't crocodile have been starting to tech this in as black deck tech, just because it's a really sticky body that's really hard for your opponent to deal with outside of Red Rock. And then you just constantly are locking up their board. It also happens to work quite well with characters that are what's it called? Or with any other black leader that gives a minus cost. You can really freeze out most characters in the game without too much effort. And being a really sticky body that can swing 10 every single turn is great on top of that. Yeah, I don't. Crocodile is hard to say a ton about, just because of how kind of obviously powerful this effect is, kind of freezing out your opponents and That's not even acknowledging the fact that with your Crocodile Leader, you get to do it twice a turn, which is really a lot of value that you can get off of this. Moving into our events, first one we have is the Patchwork. Patchwork is one that I am very mixed on. When it's good, it's really good. When it is a brick, it is really tough to make use of. There are lines where you can freeze 2 10 costs as long as one of them is already rested. And that can be quite good. And sometimes with Dazbones, you can use it earlier in the game, which is definitely probably a level up moment if you can manage to identify the points where it is correct to play one of these early in the game to kind of snowball advantage early. But it is definitely also a card that bricks pretty bad sometimes. Seeing the second one when you just want to see more Crocs or even Searchers, it is definitely the brickiest card in the deck. Pretty much all of your other cards have an angle where you can play them in the end game and make use of them. But Patchwork has to have particular setup for it to become useful. If you've been playing Crocs 2-3 turns in a row and you need just one more turn, sometimes this Patchwork just doesn't do anything for you. Whereas pretty much any other card in your deck gives you a better chance of finding stuff. So I'm not sure exactly where this one should land. I've seen lists run 4, I've seen lists run 0. I'm really unclear where I want to do it. So I think that what is going to be one of my to-do list items going forward is figuring out, is this card correct for the way I play the deck? And if so, at how many? I think the answer is probably going to be 3, 4, or 0. I don't think that there's going to be any other number than those. I don't think 1 or 2 is probably ever correct, at least with my current intuition here. But I wouldn't be surprised if 0 or 4 is the only correct answers, and then it depends on what you use for other tech cards to kind of bridge the gaps. But yeah, complicated card, definitely one on my list to feel out what is the correct play with it. Next up, we have Ground Death. Unambiguously, this is a 4 of. It can be bricky. I will say that there will be times where you have too many of these in hand. Because they are great to search, they are not great to draw. Sometimes when you have just one, then that first one is good to draw. The second one can start to feel kind of constricting as you start to draw them. So definitely make sure that you are ready to use these early if you're drawing too many of them. Definitely a card that is unambiguously very powerful. And I think that I use the negate mode some, but I think that I probably still don't even use it enough, because that negate mode is also very strong, lets you get past a blocker or other pesky effect sometime late in the game, which can be really important, but still working on that. But I think that unambiguously, even with the brickiness that it can cause to the deck, it is definitely a straight 4 of. Worst case, you can pitch it to Crocodile effect, the revive effect, which I have done before, but it feels really bad to do that. So maybe that is also part of the learning, is learning when it's okay to pitch Ground Death to Crocodile for keeping some other utility card. But yeah, definitely a 4 of. Next one is finally the Searcher. Just like with Miss Valentine, you definitely want to run 4 of each of these. One of the things that you'll notice with this deck when you're playing it, the games where you brick out are the games where you don't find enough Searchers or enough ways to fill up the yard, and you don't end up with the right stuff in the yard. These cards are exceptionally important consistency pieces, and at least until the deck finds a moment where it moves away from Baroque Works, which I don't think is likely, but there is an edge case in which you run kind of your core Baroque Works cards and then not run quite as many, filling in with some other just generic value cards. But in that world, you might cut this, but until we find a world where that is reasonable, this is 100% a 4 of, just like with Miss Valentine. So that is the basic deck. Next, I want to just kind of give some bullet points on what I'm hoping to get out of this series and be ready for regionals with. First thing is I want to make sure that I learn the matchups. Some of the matchups I feel like I already understand. Like Mihawk, I feel very confident into. I feel like I win significantly more often against Mihawk than lose. On the other side of the coin, though, is the Purple Doflamingo deck. I don't know exactly what I'm doing wrong because I feel like I understand some of the matchup things. But I do feel like there's a frequent time when my opponent, and I can't tell if it's a high roll because it doesn't feel like their deck is doing anything abnormally strong. But there are definitely games where I feel the game slip away from me and I need to figure out exactly what it is that's causing that. I don't know if I need to starve more early. I don't know if I need to swing at board more effectively or counter more early. So the Dofi matchup is one that I need to learn. And then you have other ones like Boa, where I feel like I have a decent intuition into Boa and into Moria and into Yellow Luffy. But I think that I could learn to improve on those matchups, particularly with getting my sequencing correct. The other thing with all of the matchups that I got to learn when to go first and when to go second. It is very easy to fall into a groove where you just pick second every game because your second curve is very strong. Going Bon Clay into a second Bon Clay into Crocodile or Miss All Sunday is very strong, especially if you can get on turn one the double search. You are in a very good spot if you do that. On the other side, though, going first and going single search into search or something like that, getting all of your stuff in the trash on those turns, and then on 5 Dawn either playing Bon Clay or a naked 5-drop, which is sometimes a requirement. You sometimes just have to do that because your deck isn't perfectly consistent to where you can always guarantee you have the Bon Clay. But having that 5 Dawn turn where you have lots of options of what to play compared to going second where you really on 4 Dawn you only want to play Bentham. If on going first you have a little more options of what to play and then you curve straight into Miss All Sunday and Crocodile after that, that is a very strong curve too that has different advantages. I found that some games you really want to get on board early and you want to play first, hitting Miss All Sunday on curve being your really important piece. And then in other games, playing the Bon Clay into Dazbones on 2 or on 4 Dawn is the correct power move. So figuring out which decks you need to play towards which outcomes, I think, is really important. Mulligans is a tough one. Because the searchers are so valuable, Mulligans for the searchers is often correct. But I want to find out when are the edge cases where a searcher is not necessary for the deck to play out. And then finally, just getting a better feel of what decks to expect to see. What matchups do I really need to pay attention to? Which ones can I concentrate on less so that I can really learn the prevalent matchups and let the other matchups be kind of more incidental practice. After learning the matchups, the next thing I need to do is fine-tune my deck. I think that comes in a couple different flavors. First is identifying which cards I need in what relative amounts, and this will be based on the prevalence from the matchups, to make sure that I'm usually hitting something that I need. If I'm expecting a field full of a whole bunch of Mihawks, then Double Finger is very good. If I'm expecting a field of a lot of aggro decks, then Dazbones is very good. And so being able to play with the ratios to match the meta is going to be really important. The other thing is going to be that math with 5 drops. I need to understand the exact play to get to and the exact cards in the deck to reliably be able to play out these 5 costs early, because that's kind of one of the early strengths you get in the deck is being able to play out these slightly above rate cards early in the game using Bunkley. So getting the ratios right on how often you need to play out those versus how often you need to have consistency pieces for finding your top end and your ground deaths for endgame. So that'll be a fine-tuning piece in the deck. The last thing that I really want to focus on getting better at is my mental heuristics. Being able to correctly identify when it is correct to counter early, for example. Oftentimes, if your opponent does swing a 5, it can be correct to get one of your 5 costs in the trash, but that's not always correct, because taking that early 5 means you get 1 extra card, which is more ways you can sculpt for the end game. By the same token, though, if you take too many early, then you end up with spots where your opponent now swinging larger, and these 1Ks get stuck rotting in your hand when you'd really like them to be in the trash so that you can churn them with your other cards. So figuring out when to take life, when to counter, most notably, when is it correct to do 2 1Ks or 3 1Ks? If your opponent swings a 7, oftentimes you want to just default to do 2K, 1K. But there will be times where you have enough of these 5 drops to where it is correct to hold on to your 2K and then go 1K, 1K, 1K for the ability to fill your trash. And so those are the kinds of things that I really feel like I need to identify and will be matchup dependent of how do I do the mechanics of playing the deck in the mid game. This will also be relevant to kind of going back to the matchups. When is it correct to play out Mr. 5 on 5 Dawn, knowing that I'm going to play Miss All Sunday into Bone Clay Daz Bones so that I can use Mr. 5 and Daz Bones both to swing at board. So being able to identify those moments is going to be important and big in the deck, and kind of understanding my matchups so that I can identify those things. But that's kind of a summary of where this series is probably going to go. I think I'm probably going to go into Ranked Sim. I don't know if I'll show every game or if I'll just show highlights. But I do want to, in every video in the series, kind of give a summary of my either how I'm tracking and practicing, or what my findings are for that kind of series, that week or whatever, as we're getting closer and closer to the regionals. My understanding will change, and I want to share those things with you. So I hope you guys are interested in following along with me, and as we learn together on how to play this crocodile deck and hopefully do well in the regionals. I haven't really set a goal for regionals, but maybe if I figure out exactly how I want to do, I will let you guys know what a goal is, and maybe we can kind of aim for it together. And then if anyone's going to be at regionals, maybe we'll see each other there and be able to compare notes by the time we get to the event. But thanks for hanging out with me. I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, goodbye.